Once upon a midnight dreary, while I watched the crow weak and weary, I pondered all the events of the movie and everyday heroes, and this is that review. Let's dive in. So here we have The Crow, a cinematic adventure compatible with the Everyday Hero system. Copyright date 2023, published by Evil Genius Games, of course. So let's take a look at the back. Some tragedies never rest, even after death. Every culture in the world has myths about our souls traveling to the land of the dead and warnings about their return. But what if you could stare into the eyes of one you once loved? Or catch a glimpse of them skipping along on a rain-soaked night years after you were put in the grave, one last time. How much is that worth? A global wave of violent crime suddenly lights cities ablaze around the world in revival of the forgotten tradition of Devil's Night. Caught in the crossfire, you can't rest until revenge is had. Or, rather, you aren't allowed to rest until the wrongs committed have been set right. With each body put in the grave, another fragmented clue is revealed. Then, without warning, the greatest secret is revealed. You are not alone. Together, you must bring justice upon the one who cracked the mystery of death, even if it sets Motor City ablaze one more time. For the path of retribution is wrought with violence and tears. As with all of these cinematic adventures up to this point, there is a very fantastic introduction into the universe this movie presents. So if you have not seen any of the movies or are a bit rusty, then it is well worth the read. There's also a QR code somewhere in this book for a sound set for Sirenscape, but you'll actually have to purchase those if you want to make use of them. But if you do like adding that bit of immersion for your players, then it may be worth it. For the players, we have 8 new backgrounds, 10 new professions, and 2 new classes, all of which feel very thematic to the dark setting this game is trying to emulate. In addition, there are 14 new feats, most of them being multi-class feats. So as for the backgrounds that we have the Abused, Counterculture, Cult Escapee, Near-Death Experience, Occult Family, Saved by the Spirits, Street Rat, and Suicide Survivor. So very dark and grim, but of course that's exactly the feeling that we want from this world. For the professions, we have bartender, charity, chop shop jockey, fortune teller, kid, magician, occultist, pawn shop owner, snitch, starving artist, and then we have our 2 new classes. Since we're playing in the world of The Crow, it only makes sense that there is an option for a reborn type class. Although, when I first read through this, I actually found it rather odd that they didn't include the reborn as an origin, as Highlander did with the Immortals. But that's probably so we can actually get some new and unique talents for this specific class. So I should mention this beforehand that as a reborn you are very much immortal in the sense that you cannot die by normal means, and so there's that aspect that really is very similar to the way Highlander functions, although the way that you are weakened or put to death is much different. So your head is not being chopped off, it's your animal or your spirit companion is killed is what is going to weaken you. And that is actually interesting in of itself, because you do get to pick your spirit bond, and that's going to be like a spirit animal that resurrected you in the first place. Each spirit bond is thematically different, and that animal is a physical presence that is always nearby with its own abilities that they actually pass on to you. It's like a class within a class because they're all different and they change the way that you can actually play. So there are 8 spirit animals or spirit bonds that you can take if you choose the reborn class, which is really good because if you're playing in the world of The Crow, you're probably gonna have a few reborn characters. And so first off, we have the butterfly. And the butterfly is tied to broken romances, friendships, and familial bonds. Butterfly reborns can reroll charisma checks, they can alter their appearance, they can calm people down, and they can even heal their allies. The cat is often associated with the sick and dying, so if you have been exploited or something of great importance has been stolen, you may be reborn under the cat spirit. The cat spirit can allow you to re-roll dexterity checks, grow claws from your hands, hide in plain sight, and even move from shadow to shadow. The crow is associated with great sadness, including tragedies. The crow allows you to transform into a crow for 10 minutes, deal extra damage to a chosen enemy, remove poisons and drugs from an ally, and gain advantage to an enemy who attacked one of your allies. Mastiffs are guardians who must protect those that are close to them from danger. The Mastiff allows you to gain tracking abilities, protect an ally nearby by taking damage for them, mystically bond with someone so you always know where the other person is, and move yourself and an ally at the same time. Moths are an omen of disaster and are reborn to avert that disaster or at least warn others of it. The moth allows you to doom enemies by having your allies gain advantage over them or the doomed enemy disadvantage. You can pass on advantage on dexterity saving throws to warn your allies of danger, and they can sprout moth wings and fly. And they can also frighten their enemies too, which is a bonus. The owl is a messenger of the gods of death. If you have intense guilt for what more could have been done, you may be resurrected under the owl spirit. Owls allow you to reroll intelligence checks, attack with a deafening screech, utilize dark vision, and gain advantage on perception checks. And they can use the help action on 2 different allies at the same time. The snake represents the cycle of violence and the never-ending repetition of vengeance. The snake allows you to incite rage in another person, gain advantage on an enemy that attacked you, transform into a snake, and make an attack as a bonus action. Last is the spider. The spider represents a destiny yet unfulfilled. The spider allows you to conjure webs, cause a spider to appear on a person to poison them, allow you to read a person's fate, and climb like a spider, like that one guy. The other new class made available is the Soothsayer, which is a smart hero. A Soothsayer's plans include the ability to allow a person to make a roll with an additional 20, with the option to use whichever result is better, so kinda like an advantage, but even if you have advantage, I guess that means you can roll like 4 dice or something like that. They can use the ability of clairvoyance, and grant an ally the ability to drop to 1 HP instead of 0. In addition, a Soothsayer can use their plans to know things that they wouldn't otherwise know, allow an enemy to take additional damage, and show an enemy their own death. So very spooky indeed. Even though the Reborn is a new class, you actually can't directly multi-class into it. Although you can still serve a spirit while still alive by taking one of their unique feats. There are 4 new general feats, although my favorite has got to be the one that allows you to distract an enemy as a bonus action to gain advantage over them on your next attack that turn. The only new rules that we have in the Crow is spells. So spells are now being introduced to everyday hero system as ritual magic. And the first thing you do is choose what kind of an effect you want your ritual to have. Rituals can be used to do just about anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it should. It's up to the GM to impose such limits. And to kind of help with this, there's a difficulty rating, just to even learn the ritual, from easy to impossible. Each of the 4 difficulties have their own methods of research and where to find the information. Then you'll need to gather the components and adhere to the rules of the ritual, such as it must be cast at midnight, or it takes multiple people to cast it. Then all that's left is to actually cast the ritual itself by passing an intelligence check against the difficulty of the ritual. And I am actually really glad that they have some sample rituals here. These are about what you'd expect to find, like Conjure Dead, you have a Corpse Puppet, Exorcism, Mental Invasion, Sight Threefold, and Softening of the Living Stone. So very interesting rituals, but it is actually really cool that it's more open-ended because it gives your players a lot of room to maneuver and for you as the GM to create some complications that kind of require some out-of-the-box thinking. And here comes the obligatory spoiler warning. This is the adventure portion of the review, so if you plan on playing this, go ask your GM to watch. Prayers of the Past serves as the adventure for this book and is intended for characters of level 5 or level 6. It brings a lot of locations that were in the original movie, and not only that, there's like a lot of nods to it in the way of items and just themes in the plot in general. It does kind of assume that the players are reborn, or at least some of them are. They are out for blood, basically, for those that wronged them. Each PC has a different villain tied to them, and there's 5 to actually choose from. So we have the professional, who's a hitman with a mission sent to do a job. It's not personal, you were just in the way. You or your friends pissed off the wrong person at the wrong time. You have the diabolical. The rational world is no place for those who see beyond. This person saw you or your friends as a getaway to power through death, and they took it. There's the maniac. Not every act of violence is planned. Through the abuse of substances, a mind degraded by tragedies of its own, or an uncanny and unexplainable love of violence, some find themselves thralls to their own madness. You or your friends were caught on the wrong side of the tracks on the wrong day in the hands of this crazed person. There's the creep. Restraining orders never kept them away. Nobody listened to you or your friends' pleas for help. They were always watching, stalking, and observing you. Then one day, when it was least expected, they struck. And last but not least, you have the dishonorable. Law enforcement was meant to keep you safe. Instead, you or your friends were swept up witnessing something you shouldn't have. Jaded and guided by self-preservation, this killer had the means to make the problems go away. As each PC tears through whatever city they happen to be in with vengeance in their heart, they soon realize that their last target is not there. Instead, there's a message that points them to Detroit, specifically Club Trash. And this is actually what makes up the Session 0. Session 0 is not only just a time where you create your characters together, but also kind of plan out the tragedies that created those characters, or that reason why those characters are now in this story. And it's rather really interesting because something bad has already happened to them, and so you kind of play out most of their story in this one session right here, and then we get to the conclusion of that journey in this actual adventure. There is a mastermind behind all this though, one who knows about the Reborn and wants to exploit them. Her name is V, and some time ago her sister was killed by one Reborn. The criminal mastermind hopes to resurrect her sister, and to prepare, she's done a lot of research on the Reborn and how they are brought back. Act 1 begins with the PCs arriving at Club Trash. They might not be aware of each other just yet, so their approach can be quite different from one another. Regardless, V has sent her spies to tail each of the PCs, which can be discovered, by the way. Depending on if the PCs manage to slip in unnoticed, arrive just in the nick of time, or are distracted and barely miss the event, that will determine their bonus for this upcoming fight. The PCs battle their way to the VIP lounge, only to discover drugged up actors in place of their target. And not only that, V knows who they are and quips at the PCs throughout the entire fight. She, of course, is not going to be at the club because that would just be a little bit too easy. And can I just point out that I absolutely love the fact that there's like this random table of missed shots that detail the destruction of those stray bullets caused. It's really interesting and a good point of detail that can add just that bit of immersion for your players. In Act 2, the PCs go to each of the locations that match their intended target for one last confrontation. Each of the locations has more information about V's plans and what's going on behind the scenes. The professional can be found at Carl Rincott's apartment holding a family hostage while they look for evidence of the Reborn in some old case file the detective hid there long ago. The maniac can be found at Zug's pawn shop as they look for Top Dollar's old swords. V also hid memories of the PCs at the pawn shop in the hopes that the maniac will somehow be able to kill them with them. So that's also something that you'll have to deal with as well. The Diabolical can be found at the Elmwood Cemetery, and their job is to bring V Micah's hand, which may have some power in them when she held onto the spirit of vengeance as she died. The Dishonorable can be found at the old Detroit Police Headquarters, and this is actually probably my favorite encounter out of the bunch, as the Dishonorables actually allowed themselves to be arrested by the police to make it harder for the PCs to actually get to them. The Creep can be found at the United Community Hospital. This turns into a cat and mouse game as the entire building is blocked and the Creep has goons and the PCs can encounter to distract them while they pick each one off one by one. Creep also has been keeping tabs on V and knows about her sister Allie, so that's a good way to doll out information on V and her plans that way. In Act 3, the PCs confront V for one last epic showdown, and depending on how well the PCs did in thwarting V's plans in each of the locations will kind of determine how prepared V is for them and how far along her plans are. The PCs can meet her at the Cathedral of St. Paul. This can be a formidable encounter because V has a bunch of plans that she can enact to help her elite mercenaries. But not only that, she's constantly looking for the PC spirit so she can deal with them and weaken the PCs. The conclusion of the adventure can go in several different directions. For example, if V kills the PCs, then she is successful in her ritual, and she gains the powers of each of the spirits bonded with the player characters. Her sister is still dead, so she causes more tragedy in the world to get what she needs. Allie can actually approach the PCs in the afterlife, not with vengeance, but to help them stop her sister from this insane plan so that she may finally rest in peace. At the very end of the book, we have the stats for the NPCs of the adventure, and then some for the movies. So we have the stats of Eric Draven, Daryl Albrecht, Sarah as a child, and also Sarah as an adult, which was from the second movie, I believe. So really cool that we get those characters. Of course, we have some pre-gens as well, which do make full use of the new classes for the Reborn and the Soothsayer. And for the Reborn, you do have like the different spirit bonds represented here, although I don't believe all of them are. So if you are looking for a very specific one, you might actually have to create it yourself. In my research for this review, I actually did go back and watch The Crow, the very first movie. And I have to say the themes in the movie are very representative here in the book. The new classes are weird in a really good way, and they all play differently from one another. Even the Reborn, which you're probably going to have a few Reborn if you're playing through like the adventure, all the different spirit bonds, they have a different play style. They have things that they're good at, and they kind of cover each other's back, which is actually really good. The adventure itself seems very grand in scope without having that big time investment of a grand adventure, if that makes any sense. I would probably rather have this adventure be the culmination of a rather bigger campaign that I've set up, specifically just to play this. But I also see why they've gone ahead and made the Session 0 the setup, where everything kind of happens in that little time frame and then we get to the conclusion. It would be very, very tricky to pull something off like that, where you might have like 4 or 5 players, each playing like their own mini adventure that's focused on that specific character. And yeah, you could try to do it, and the other characters are playing like background characters or side characters for that main character, but to do that 4 or 5 times, that's kind of a lot to do, and it might not be fun for all the players. I mean, they probably just want to stick with their, kick-ass Reborn hero. There's a lot of value in this book and what it brings to the everyday hero system. If you like magic, like modern magic, supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if you want to emulate like something like Monster of the Week, but with the 5th edition system, then using this book combined with Everyday Heroes would be perfect for that. I mean, it allows you to perform magic in the form of rituals, and you don't have to have like a dark and gritty style game with Reborn and stuff like that. You could just take the rituals and how that functions from this book and even the Soothsayer class and bring it into something modern that you want using the Everyday Hero system, and there you go. Now you've got something that's actually, I think, rather unique as opposed to some of the other cinematic universe adventures that are just, sci-fi in scope. And that's actually going to do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and I will see you guys in the next video.